Hey, thanks so much for calling in. You're on the line with Kyle Henderson. Who am I on the line with and where are you calling in from?
This is Edward from Jacksonville, Florida.
What's up, Edward? I really appreciate you calling in. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, sir. The reason I'm calling is the guy, I think it was the guy that was just on, was on your show this morning. Maybe it was a different guy. But he made the claim that, the SEC might not get anybody into the playoffs. Like, for example, under the scenario, say Georgia is undefeated and Alabama beats Georgia, we might not go. I would tell you from history and whatnot, there's a 0% chance of that. Zero. I mean, because number one, there would be no credibility to the playoffs if you left the SEC out of the playoffs, given their dominance. Like last year, the Georgia won the championship game by, what was it, 60 points or something like that?
Yeah.
I think it was like 60 points. And then the SEC has won 75% of the championships since 2006 or something like that. So you leave the champion out of the SEC, or for coming out of the SEC, you leave them out of the playoffs for teams like Michigan, which hasn't been competitive in a playoff yet. So to me, it just doesn't seem. I was looking at the top 10, and there I could see, FSU wins out. You got Texas has beaten us, so I could see where it might get a little bit contentious there. But I still, I guess Washington could win out. Number one, that's never going to happen. It's crowded in the middle of the year. A lot of teams always lose, so I don't anticipate that happening. I don't think the SEC gets two in. Unfortunately for Georgia, if Georgia is undefeated going into that championship and they lose, they might very well be left out as a non-champion, which probably wouldn't, if you're trying to pick the four best teams, that probably wouldn't be justifiable in my book. But I just don't see it, and the guy seems so adamant about it. I just think he's off base, and I've been thinking about that all day. That's just not going to happen. Can you imagine leaving the SEC champion out, given recent history and stuff? I can't imagine it.
Yeah, and I think the fact that Georgia has been so dominant the last couple of years, that has to carry a lot of weight. And let's face it, sometimes in college football, the way that it's so kind of like the Frankenstein setup is you're already in the playoffs. Like Alabama's already in the playoffs in some weird way, if it would be the weirdest playoff bracket to really look at. But Alabama versus Georgia, if Alabama wins out, right, and Georgia wins out, that is a playoff play-in game to the college football playoffs, 100%. And that game's 100%. Going to carry so much weight. And that's really the only way that Alabama is going to get respect back by everybody, is if they go toe to toe with Georgia and beat an undefeated Georgia team. That's the only way that they're going to get the respect back. That's the only way that Jalen Milroe is going to get the respect, is if he's able to beat Georgia. If Alabama's able to beat Georgia, and rightfully so. Look, overall, Alabama, they lost early. They get it. What they've done is they have to, and they know this, they have to win out, and that's fine. That's the only way. And if Georgia wins that game, then they're in the playoffs. Now, what happens on the other side with Ohio State and Michigan is going to be interesting, because each of those teams is in the same side of the conference. And the other side of the Big Ten, there's nobody. Like, the competition is so weak. So let's say Ohio State and Michigan, who really hasn't played anybody at all yet, if they just lose one game, do you leave them out? I think, who knows, because the style points matter to the playoff committee, 1,000,000%. And then you have Florida State. They have some tough back end games. I've said that I'm not drinking the Kool-Aid. With that said, there's a lot of people who do like Florida State. Really good quarterback, and what they've done this season, they've won big. They beat LSU. That's kind of the game that they're hanging their hat on. They got to finish out. Oklahoma. They're going to have another tall task with Texas, but then again, Texas quarterback looks like he's hurt and he's out. Washington, they still have to play USC. They have to play Utah, just like Oregon does.
Right.
That Utah team is stout. They're really good, especially on the defensive side. So when you look to kind of the college football playoffs, there's a lot to that still goes in place. But Alabama, look, they just have to keep winning. They lose again, it's
Right.
who cares? It's all over. But if they keep winning, they're 100% in. And I think they have the talent to do it. Honestly, I think that we all know that they have the defense to do it. And I think some of the question marks around this team continue to be the inconsistency of the offense. But the offense is 100% improving. And they're doing a better job. They've shown that they can run the football. It might not be, 300-yard type games, but Jace McClellan, his performance against Tennessee was impressive. It really was. Honestly, they were able to run the football. Caden Proctor, his best game was against Tennessee, the third-ranked pass rush in the country. So the offense is improving, and if they continue to win, as you see on this graphic right here, I think that I have another graphic, and it shows, and it's kind of fun to play around with. If you go to the ESPN app, you can play around with the ESPN projection, and if Alabama wins its remaining games, this is what it has. Alabama, oops, I did the wrong full screen. Has Alabama making the playoffs 94% if they're able to win their remaining games. So it has Alabama favored against LSU by 62%, against Kentucky 88%, 99% against Chattanooga, and then 85% against Auburn. And then, they'd, of course, have to win in the SEC championship game. So it is what it is. And we all kind of know that what they have to do is just win out. So I guess that's our
I think that's true. I really don't think the committee would dare leave out. Under that scenario, the committee just wouldn't. There's no way they could justify that.
What about this scenario?
Not because especially. I'm sorry, but especially like Michigan, they haven't played anybody. They don't tend to be able. They can't really compete at that level. They haven't proven yet they can compete at that level. So anyway,
what about this? What if Georgia loses to Tennessee and is able to still win the SEC? You got to think that they're still in, right? Or are they out? That may be and they would be Alabama, so Alabama would obviously be out, and then you have Georgia. I don't know. It's fun to talk about those type of scenarios to kind of look forward to. But I mean, you got to think that a lot of these teams still lose games or whatever it is. So to end the show, let's go over these 5 questions real quick. So with that said, number 1, Isaiah Bond returning punts potentially. Do you want to see another punt returner for Alabama?
Yeah, man, that's one of our biggest deficiencies. I mean, there's no reason the return man shouldn't get under those punts. We should at least be getting fair catches out of those, and we can't keep